While Mihir had navigated the difficult waters across the world, it was politics that went on to test him in a different way. The then communist government of Jyoti Basu in West Bengal wanted him to be one of the Marxist Party's campaigners. He refused, and look at this. Instead, he contested as an independent candidate against Basu. He lost, and the party and the government in West Bengal went on an overdrive against his business, fomenting labor trouble and destroyed his venture. Cases were initiated against him, his house and office were raided, and his bank account was frozen. He went bankrupt. He was left with no money even to feed his family. By the time he was 50, he had suffered a minor stroke and was a shattered man. So what was this book all about? Well, as you can imagine, putting a book together like this is a lot of hard work, but the first and most complicated thing one has to do is to choose 75 people from not just 1.38 billion people that are alive today, but starting from 15th of August 1947. Now notice that we did not include here those whose contributions were before independence. This is a celebration of post-independence India. If nothing else, it was in order to keep the book tractable. This included, by the way, we left out people who may have been alive after independence, but whose contributions were largely before independence. And then, of course, there were other things we had to keep in mind. In a book like this, usually, and I looked through similar couple of books that were written in the 50th year of India's independence. And one of the things that struck me is that it was dominated by three groups of people: politicians, cricketers, and Bollywood. And both of us were quite definite that we were not going to allow that to happen. Not to suggest that these three groups of people are not important, but we were very keen that other facets of India's public life were also brought in. So the book is full of all kinds of other people: sports persons, scientists, writers, archaeologist, historian, you name it. We have, and business, of course. So there are all kinds of people from every walk of life. We tried to make sure that there were people from different parts of the country, and obviously Delhi and Mumbai tend to dominate any such list that you can put together. So we had to make sure that we didn't go and leave out people who made great contributions, but for a variety of reasons, left out of the national conversation. So we went out of our way to dig out people from the Northeast, from some of the smaller states, and so on. Of course, nothing wrong with Mumbai and Delhi, and there are quite a few people here, maybe even disproportionately so. But nevertheless, we did try to make sure there were people from different parts of the country, and as far as possible, represented here. Then we had to choose even after doing that. And so, for example, if there was a particularly great event, how do we, and there were multiple, great moments of history, very often multiple people are responsible for it. So if there is such an event, then how many of them do you include there and how many do you leave out? Now sometimes it's easy to do. So say the 1983 Cricket World Cup victory. Now, I think fair enough if we had chosen Kapil Dev as kind of the representative of that moment. But more complicated when you say take something like the 1991 reforms. Should P.V. Narasimha Rao be there, or Manmohan Singh, or both? And we eventually chose P.V. Narasimha Rao. This is not to demean Dr. Manmohan Singh's contribution, but then we had to make these kinds of choices along the way. We also had to be fair to every decade along the way. So it's very often tempting to give a lot more weightage to our own times. But let's say we were taking sportsmen from this entire period, and you'd go back to the early period, part of this time, and you would think about who were the great sportsmen in the first 2 decades of India's independence. And it turns out, by some margin, the great sportsman of that time was a hockey player called Balbir Singh Dosanjh. Now, many of you are younger members of the audience, may not even know who he is, but he was considered after Dhyan Chand the greatest hockey player ever. And he was instrumental in 2 gold medals that India won in the Olympics. So again, what I'm trying to say is, there is a fair amount of effort that goes into choosing these things. Then of course came the problem of writing them. Now, I've written multiple books, and so has Rajesh, but they tend to be on one topic. Now, doing books worth of effort on one topic and doing 75 topics worth of 4 pages, I can assure you that the latter is much more difficult, because you're always wondering whether you're making some real boo-boo about some icon, and then you'll get called out and pilloried for it on Twitter. So I have to say, a lot of work did go into doing this, and Rajesh particularly put in a lot more work than I would for going and making sure every single piece was hammered, every single nail was hammered in. So I hope there aren't too many mistakes, and I hope we get forgiven for if there are any. Please bring them to our notice if they are there, and we'll be happy to correct them. And then of course there was the wonderful team from Rupa. There's Kapish, of course, who you saw just earlier, and then there was Yamini, our editor, and then there was a whole team, whether it's Aurodeep and Sakshi, who helped copy edit this book. Then there's Vasundhara, who helped put this event together today. There were Gurvinder and Mahima, who used to work for me when I was at the finance ministry, and they both volunteered to put some of the help me with the research and get some of the photographs and so on. There's also Vinayak. I don't know if he's in the audience somewhere. There he is. I mean, extraordinary amount of work to pull out photographs for this, especially since you have to remember, we have to make sure that the copyrights are all right. So he had to go and dig through all of the PIB's millions of photographs that they have and pull out photographs. Now, obviously, for some of the people, it's easy to get, but there were people from especially the earlier decades, military heroes, for example. We have got several military heroes here, and finding some of their photographs was not easy. And he found them, he dug them out from the PIBs and other archives, hunted down some of the families down to be able to get the photographs. So a lot of work went into putting this together. So I really hope you appreciate and enjoy the book. Now, what I'm going to do is read out one of the characters to give you a flavor of the book, the kinds of characters we have have in this book. This one is one of my favorites. It's a swimming sensation, Mihir Sen. You will find that he is quite a character. He's not just a swimming sensation, but a successful lawyer. He's one of the founders of our ready-made garments industry, surprisingly, and not many people know this. And yet, India was not very kind to him. So I'm going to read about his life. So Mihir Sen, the swimming sensation, chapter 19. From doing a menial job at a railway station in England and being called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn to becoming the world's greatest long-distance swimmer and turning into a successful businessman, Mihir Sen's life story is fascinating, and yet it is also tragic, because Sen was struck by Alzheimer's and lost the precious memories of his feats and was abandoned by relatives, friends, and well-wishers. In his last days, lying helpless in a hospital in Kolkata, the 66-year-old inhabited a world of loneliness and emptiness. He breathed his last on 11 June 1997, so not very long back. Mihir Sen, born on 16th November 1930 in Purulia district of West Bengal, was the first Indian to swim across the English Channel from Dover to Calais in 1958. Not just that, he did so in the fourth fastest time at that time, 14 hours and 45 minutes. 8 years later, he became the only person to swim across the oceans of 5 continents in one calendar year. They included the Palk Strait, the Dardanelles, Bosphorus, Gibraltar, and the entire length of the Panama Canal. The Guinness Book of World Records called him the world's greatest long-distance swimmer. Sen's mother, Leelabati, was determined to give him the best education the family could afford, though their financial condition was precarious. She supplemented her husband's income by selling chicken eggs and milk obtained from the 2 cows and chickens she kept in her backyard. The family shifted to Cuttack when they were 8, and so he could attend a better school. He graduated with a degree in law from Utkal University in Bhubaneswar, Odisha, all the while struggling for shortage of money. The financial crunch did not quite quell Sen's ambitions. With his mother's moral support, he began to go to England to prepare for the bar, but money was once again the problem. Then the Chief Minister Biju Patnaik came to his help, but only after relentless persuasion by Sen's family, and in 1950 he boarded a ship to England. He found a job in a railway station in the country and had to work night shifts. Found sleeping on duty one day, he was sacked. So Sen was told that India House recruited Indians for employment while they studied, and he made his way there. He was hired by the Indian ambassador V.K. Krishna Menon, but only after he had been initially turned down. He enrolled at Lincoln's Inn to study law in 1951. He would work through the day at India House, which meant that he could not attend classes, so he studied at night from books he borrowed from the institution's library. The hard work paid off, and he was called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn in February 1954. Now, this alone is quite an achievement, but here goes. Around that time, Sen happened to read an article about Florence May Chadwick, who became the first American woman to swim the English Channel in 1950. It inspired him no end, and he resolved to do the same. The problem was that he had virtually no experience in swimming. At that time, he barely knew the dog paddle, which he had learnt in a pond in Cuttack. So, determined nonetheless, a trait that he had inherited from his mother, he enrolled for classes at the local YMCA club and mastered the front crawl or the freestyle technique after practicing for hours every day. On 27th of September 1958, he did what seemed impossible. He swam the English Channel. He was a national hero by then, and he returned home, and in 1959 he was awarded the Padma Shri. The achievements boosted his morale, and Sen set out for greater glories in his newly acquired sport. He became the first man to swim the oceans of the first 5 continents in one calendar year. But he first needed 45,000 rupees to pay the Indian Navy for both the record keeping and to navigate the Palk Straits. He raised half the amount through sponsors, notably Kolkata's The Statesman, the newspaper. The balance of amount came from, guess who? Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, who by the way is also featured in the book. With her nod, the Indian Navy's INS Sukanya and INS Sharada accompanied Sen on his swim. Sen became the first Indian on record to swim across the Palk Straits on 5th-6th April 1966 between Sri Lanka and Dhanushkoti in 25 hours and 36 minutes. On 24th August, he became the first Asian to cross the Straits of Gibraltar between Europe and Africa in about 8 hours. On 12th September, he became the world's first man to swim across the 40-mile long of the Dardanelles and Gallipoli between Europe to Asia Minor in 13 hours and 55 minutes. The same year, he became the first Indian to swim Bosphorus in 4 hours. By this point, I suppose 4 hours kind of was not much. As well as the first non-American to swim across the entire length, the 80-kilometer length of the Panama Canal in 34 hours on the 29th and 31st of October. This achievement earned him a place in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's greatest long-distance swimmer. He was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 1967. His exploits were recorded in the Black Books in Lincoln's Inn. Now, all of this would also have been enough. But then, look what he does. He returned to India in 1958, shortly after his English Channel victory. He practiced criminal law in Calcutta High Court, but later turned into a successful businessman. His company was recognized by the government of India as the country's second largest exporter of silk. While Mihir had navigated the difficult waters across the world, it was politics that went on to test him in a different way. The then communist government of Jyoti Basu in West Bengal wanted him to be one of the Marxist Party's campaigners. He refused, and look at this. Instead, he contested as an independent candidate against Basu. He lost, and the party and the government in West Bengal went on an overdrive against his business, fomenting labor trouble and destroyed his venture. Cases were initiated against him, his house and office were raided, and his bank account was frozen. He went bankrupt. He was left with no money even to feed his family. By the time he was 50, he had suffered a minor stroke and was a shattered man. When Jyoti Basu yet again approached Sen in 1988, he told him that all his problems would be resolved overnight if he joined the CPM. Though he was severely ill, Sen flatly rejected the offer. As a result, his problems only increased. As another writer said, such was the reward for a man who had brought such glory to his country.